showing up and being present here. I want to make sure we have enough time to dive into the real important meat of this presentation. So let's get in. This panel, as a reminder for everyone who's in the space, is really about sharing insights from new solutions consultants. I always love to start every panel about talking about our why, but before I get into that, I should introduce myself. My name is Nina Berger, pronouns she and her, and I'm the Senior Career Services Manager at PreSales Academy. So what does that role do? So I manage our admissions and career support for students going through our Pre-Sales Academy program. I'll provide a little insight into what that is shortly, but overall, I'm making sure that, hey, if anyone's looking to make the transition into pre-sales, they're a good fit and they're also having a successful job search process after they complete our program. So that is why I'm here today. I have a really soft connection to pre-sales. I really love helping new professionals dive into the career, and I love to see how they're ramping up through their experience. So it's been a real pleasure to be working at PreSales Collective over these past years. So let's get into this. Why are we diving into this webinar today? So when we're thinking about pre-sales and I think about PreSales Collective and all the events we're hosting, I feel like we focus a lot on our middle level managers, our leaders, skill development, but sometimes we don't have a lot of space when it comes to really providing an opportunity for people who are newer to the profession to speak and share their experiences. And let's face it, this community is for people on all different levels. And so ultimately, when we're thinking about this webinar, we really wanted to provide a space for the future of pre-sales. Everyone who's aspiring to come into this role or is new is shaping what the future of this profession really looks like. And so we wanted to provide a space for newer solution consultants, sales engineers to really share their experiences so others can learn, benefit, commiserate with it, all those great things. In addition, this is a really great space and opportunity for us to share insight into this profession. I'm constantly having conversations with aspiring professionals or newer professionals on what are best practices to ramp up in the profession, or am I a good fit for this profession? And this is really a space where y'all can learn from other people and really see if, hey, is this a good pathway for me to move forward with? Or what are some ways for me to really make sure I'm on the right path for my long-term career in pre-sales? And last but not least, it's providing space for connection. I have found that webinars are a really good space to get knowledge, but also to connect with people who you may not have had the opportunity to connect with before. So I highly recommend exploring around, especially the other participants in this space, and thinking about, hey, how can I connect with other professionals and really continue the conversation? We're going to talk about challenges in pre-sales. We're going to talk about how people have made the shift into pre-sales. And I have found that a great element to contribute to that success really is continuing the conversation, really sharing our viewpoints and making sure that, hey, we're not just existing in a little box, we're spreading it out above. And that's why we're kind of here in Pre-Sales Collective. Before I get into our lovely panelists, I do want to spend a quick amount of time and talk about additional support and resources that Pre-Sales Collective offers. I know everyone's coming from a very different experience with Pre-Sales Collective. Some might be new members, some might be older members, but I think it's really important to think about, hey, what are some things I can look into after this experience to really continue my momentum forward? So first and foremost, I said a lot about Pre-Sales Collective, but if you are new here, you are part of the largest community of pre-sales professionals. This is a community where we are offering live events, we're offering webinars like this one, summits, and a space for professionals in the pre-sales profession to share their thoughts, really grow together, execute on best practices, and learn from each other. And when I'm thinking about especially newer SEs and aspiring SEs, I think some really great ways for y'all to make the most out of this experience is, first of all, making sure you're fully signed up as a member, but also engaging in our Slack community. I have found that this community is a really great space for kind of voicing ideas, for asking for help and feedback. And these are some channels that I have thought to be really helpful, especially in the space when you're still exploring or you're newer. Like, I have seen some really great conversations in this space, and this is just one of the outlets to consider when you're thinking about resources and maybe things to help you along in your journey. Another good thing to consider with Pre-Sales Collective also is the networking opportunities. We do monthly orbit chats, so that's an opportunity to sign up, get matched with someone else in the collective, and continue the conversation. But we also offer a lot of enablement programs when it comes to Pre-Sales Collective. I do want to spend a hot second and talk about our self-paced and live programs. So if you are someone who's still exploring pre-sales, I highly recommend our Intro to Pre-Sales course. It is completely free. Both these programs are free, and it is an opportunity to dive in, learn more about pre-sales, and also learn about the career paths that kind of connect to pre-sales. I think is a really good beginner space, especially to learn the basics and make sure, hey, is this a profession I want to lean into? And even if you are new to pre-sales or currently in your role, I also recommend our pre-sales technical enablement course because it's a really good insight into technical topics related to pre-sales and kind of it's a good resetting period of, hey, am I aware of how APIs, networks, and all those elements play into technical enablement in my role? So these are two self-paced programs, but we also offer live programs through Pre-Sales Collective. Two live programs I think are really amazing, especially for newer or aspiring pre-sales professionals, are Pre-Sales Academy and Pre-Sales Foundation. So starting on the Academy side, which is where I spend a lot of my work, this program is for reskilling people who want to make the shift into pre-sales. So this is a 10-week program. It is really geared towards career changers. And when I say career changers, it doesn't need to always be coming from a completely different career. You could be career changing from another sales role or another role in tech. But I also see people coming from teaching backgrounds or construction backgrounds. It really depends on what skills you ultimately bring to the table. And so this program really focuses on giving you the fundamentals training for pre-sales, giving you a nice solid base to build off of, and then launching you into your job search of starting your new role in pre-sales. This program is hosted every 2 months. We're wrapping up admission right now for our next cohort in February, but so I highly recommend if you're interested applying as soon as possible. But if we're not able to get you into this cohort, our next cohort will be in April. And then on the flip side, we have Pre-Sales Foundation. So this program is for early career professionals. So you already have the role, you're starting off, you might have already gone through your onboarding process, and you're looking for that next step to make sure, hey, I have a really solid foundation to launch myself off of to have a very fruitful and productive career in pre-sales. So Foundations is a 4-week program. It really focuses on clear, important competencies for pre-sales. So we dive into major aspects of the position and make sure you are refining your approach and making sure you're delivering engaging demos, presenting with great storytelling, and making sure you're able to handle objections easily. In addition, we have found that this program is really important when thinking about, hey, how am I improving my performance over time? And how is that performance improvement really contributing to my impact on my team? Ultimately, we want to make sure that anyone coming out Pre-Sales Foundations is able to broaden their impact on their team and really accelerate their career in pre-sales because they're getting a learning that's based in best practices. So these are two big programs that we love here at Pre-Sales Collective. If you are interested, please reach out. We will definitely share links to the courses. I'll drop them in the chat. But those are some resources I think are really great within Pre-Sales Collective to consider, especially as you are a newer or more aspiring or exploring the space professional for pre-sales. So that is what we have for you. And let's get into this panel because I've done way too much talking to the space. So let's dive in. I have a collection of amazing panelists here today. So what I am going to do is first and foremost, have them introduce themselves before we get into the questions. And each of these panelists come from a variety of backgrounds, so let them do their own introductions. So for my panelists, I would love for each of you to share your name, your role, your company, maybe a little insight into what your product at your company does, and then where you are based in this country or even outside this country. And last but not least, let's do something fun. I would love for you all to answer the question of what is something new you're looking to try in 2024, just to show a little bit of your personality to our group. So to kick it off, I'm going to have Khalil introduce himself.
Everyone, my name is Khalil Lewis. I am a sales engineer at FusionOff. Been there close to a year and a couple weeks, and uh, my background previous to sales engineering was finance and sales as well. Um, Fun fact about me, something that I would probably want to try this year. We just got our family just got our passport, so hopefully we can do some traveling later on this year, but nothing in immediate plans. So
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing, Khalil. And I am going to hand it over to Lexi.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Lexi Wiseman. I am a sales engineer at a company called Data Miner. I've been in the role for about 2 years. Prior to that, I came from the customer success space. So I was a CSM. And I am based in Brooklyn. A little bit about my company. We essentially use AI for real-time event detection in both the physical and cybersecurity space. And lastly, one thing I'm excited to try this year is solo travel. I just booked a solo trip to Sedona, Arizona for my birthday. So very excited for that.
I love that, Lexi. Awesome. Let's hand it over to Curtis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Curtis Barber. I'm a solutions engineer here at Soshi Inc. It's a marketing technology, and they help with specifically a marketing platform for multi-location brands and franchises. I've been there about 1.5 years. Previous to that, my background was as a theater teacher. I did go through the PreSales Academy program and launched into my pre-sales career from that. So super happy to have done that. And a fun fact about me that I think I'll try in 2024, I would say traveling. The funny thing, Nina, is that like now that we all are in pre-sales, we have the flexibility and means to travel. So that's probably why everybody else is saying traveling. I think I'll say I'm going to try to make it to the gym this year. I did it yesterday and I can't lift my arms over my head. So doing good.
I love that. Hey, you got to start somewhere.
Right.
And I love that. I think I love when we're all exploring kind of different things that just make sense for our lives. So beautiful. And then last but not least, Georgia, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Georgia. I'm based in the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent, in the middle of the UK. Not that anybody really knows anywhere in the UK, though I have seen some people in the chat, so that's good. Um, I currently work at Rhythm, which recently rebranded from Channel Advisor and Commerce Hub as a merger. Um, I've been there about 2 years now, and I sort of pivoted into my role there. It's an e-commerce SaaS software company, so I used to work for an e-commerce brand, so that's how I've kind of moved across. I was a customer, and now work there. Oh, and then
Hey,
something for 2024. Following on from Curtis, I've actually signed myself up for a 10K run, which I haven't ran for about 10 years. So yeah, having to do some training.
I love this. We got the travel group. We have the training group. This is amazing. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Let's get into our talk points for today. So this panelist, we're really going to kind of dive into different experiences as being new solution consultants, and we're really going to start from the beginning. So my first question for a couple of my panelists is really focusing in on what is that moment you decided to make that shift into pre-sales. So my question, and I'm going to hand it over to Khalil to start, is what was that pivotal moment in your career when you realized the potential of pre-sales and you really decided to make the shift?
yeah, that's a great question. So I would start by saying that previously, my background, like coming from, I was mainly in real estate mortgage industry for a while. Um, I had some developer experience previously doing some freelance work some years past, but I never heard of sales engineering or pre-sales, that topic existed, and it kind of just naturally found um, my way into like understanding and learning the topic. So um, I would think that the main deciding factor that made me shift my focus and like hey, I need to try something else. Things were going, if anyone knows anything about the mortgage or real estate market, going into 2022, earlier that year, things kind of, with the rise in inflation and interest rates, started like skyrocketing. It kind of, you know, short of 2007 and 8 was probably the worst decline as far as mortgage sales and refinancing and things of that nature. So used to making a certain amount of income, and then that, kind of went sharp decline. So it kind of got me thinking, like, looking into other different career paths. And like I mentioned before, previously, I had worked, did some development work as a freelance web developer. So being able to combine, the engineering aspect with my customer facing experience, and being able to know how to talk to people, know how to relate, know how to, build value and, sell value, was something when I found out pre-sales and what an actual sales engineer, what that details, it was something like, yeah, this is a home run. This is exactly what I need to pivot towards. So that was a preliminary discussions I had internally in my head, and what led me to making that transition.
Nice. No, I love how you were very much aware of kind of like what are the things shifting around you, but also what are some opportunities for me to still leverage the skills I've developed over the past years? Because you ultimately, sounds like you didn't want to start over from the beginning, correct?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I've made a couple career changes in my career, and since I've been working, and yeah, I didn't want to make a complete 180. I wanted to be able to use what skill sets that I had available, and something that I truly liked and wanted to do. So.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I also want to pose this same question on that pivotal moment in your career to Curtis. Curtis, we would love to hear about your story as well.
Sure, thanks. To make a very long story short, I was a teacher, and the first step to making a change is like accepting that you're not happy in your current situation. So I realized I wasn't happy, and instead of just sort of wallowing in it or saying that it would never get better, I started looking for a way to get out of education. But again, just like Khalil, like not to start over. So I was pretty, like, in terms of PSA, I was pretty aware of the idea of like a boot camp versus going back to school for a degree. And when that came on my radar, I saw that as a really good way to try to enter the space. Again, like him, I didn't really know about pre-sales or sales engineering, what it really was. I thought the idea of salespeople today was like, if you didn't sell, you didn't eat. And to come to find out, there was like another person who was deeply involved both in the customer, but also being a subject matter expert and a technical resource for them. That really appealed to me based on my background. So I saw that, decided to make that shift, and saw the path up in front of me at that point.
Oh, I love hearing that. I think it's really interesting to just hear how, at the end of the day, sometimes we happen upon pre-sales because we're looking for something new that still leverages our experience, but puts us in a space where, hey, I feel challenged again. I feel like I'm not completely reinventing myself, but I'm putting myself in a space where I am taking my skills to the next level, which I think is really great. I know that Lexi and Georgia come from different backgrounds into the space, but I think what's interesting about all these y'all being in this panel is the fact that we all discovered pre-sales in a different way. And let's face it, this career is not always the first thing you think about, even when you're maybe going to college and exploring majors or just thinking about what I want to do in my life. It's definitely a career that people happen upon, and there's definitely a lot of different pathways to going in and kind of starting to find that, hey, pre-sales is where I want to spend a good chunk of my time in my professional career. So I appreciate y'all sharing and leading us into another topic that I think really has kind of emerged slowly through this first question is the emphasis on skills. So I know as career changers, Khalil, Curtis, y'all are definitely ones who had to really think about how you were reskilling and had to add new things to your portfolios. So a question I do want to pose to both Lexi and Georgia is, overall, how did your skill set evolve as you made the shift into pre-sales? And which skills have been really important for your success right now? And I'll start off with Lexi.
Yeah. So like I said, I started out as a customer success manager. So I think the mindset was really focused on training and onboarding, and you already knew the pain points of the customer and why they bought your product. So where I've evolved and I continue to evolve is that shift into the selling mentality. So kind of showing them what's necessary, but not everything, and showing it in an actual impactful way that's going to tell a story and going to convince them, why they need this, why this will help them. And I think a key way to evolve here is really learning the art of discovery. Shout out to the foundation scores that definitely helped me a lot there. I was fairly skilled already at active listening, and that's a big part of the role, especially as an SE. Focusing on what their pain points are and not just taking what they're saying at face value. So continuing to dig into that, asking questions, priorities for them, timeline, expectations, etc. was big for me.
Nice. No, I've definitely seen how important discovery can play into the success, not only in just like how you feel when you're working with clients, but also just in the process as a whole. Over to you, Georgia.
I think for me, coming from an e-commerce brand already, I already had a bit of an advantage of I knew the product really well that I was interviewing for. So for me, I already had a lot of the consultative approach of side of things. Obviously, you've mentioned sales engineer, solutions engineer, but we often hear solutions consultant in there too. I think there's a lot of that consultative aspect to the role. For me, and again, this is probably quite different to what you see for the majority of people coming into pre-sales. I wasn't super technical, so I had the whole sales and the consultative approach locked in, but I wasn't super technical. So that's something I've really focused on in the last sort of 2 years, is where were those gaps in my knowledge and really learning more about that. So I think, yeah, it's kind of noticing in yourself where the gaps are, and I think sometimes they're even some soft skills, so like just being comfortable talking to people, or it's that whole thing about knowing when you're on a call exactly who you're speaking to, and how to word things towards that specific person, or how to treat them. So yeah, that's, I think, how my skills have sort of evolved the most, is technically. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I think sometimes we definitely have to think about, hey, the pre-sales world exists as technical validation. So sometimes you do need to ramp up in those technical skills to better explain your product and make sure, hey, is the client really on board? Do they know the full extent of what this product can offer them? And I love the notes kind of through this conversation of just the importance of interpersonal skills. I find that when we're looking at candidates for Pre-Sales Academy, that is such a big thing that comes up. And I love to see how people will come in with like strong basis of, hey, I love engaging with people, I love listening to people, but also they eventually see that shift over time, like y'all have, of, oh, I need to change my approach, especially now that I'm working with a new audience and I'm making sure that ultimately I'm selling the value of this product. So very well said. Does anyone have any last minute thoughts on skills before I get to our next question?
I think to echo what George just said, like, it depends on who you're talking to, right?
Sure.
There's an end user, there's a power user, and there's a way to demo to them, and there's a different way to demo to a C-suite. And if I've learned nothing in the time that I've been in SC, it's how to change my talk track, because people at a C-suite, a CEO, a CFO, whomever, they want to say, so what, who cares? You need to be able to deliver value succinctly and easily to them.
No, very well said. Because it's really about knowing your audience at the end of the day. And it's something that comes with time and reps. And I know my newer SCs in this space are definitely picking up on that of like, hey, how am I shifting? How am I making sure that I'm really learning those nuances? So I'm glad you highlighted that, Curtis. And coming off of that, I know one thing that has been an interesting kind of like continual thread that I've noticed through both new SCs and also aspiring SCs is that also that element of kind of influence in pre-sales of how am I building connections? How am I leveraging those connections not only to think about how am I learning about this profession, but also how am I leveraging those connections for my continuous development over time? So the next category I would love to dive into as a panel is talking about how y'all have built kind of influence throughout your times in your roles. So I'm going to start off with Curtis, and I would love to hear about how you go about making connections and building influence before early and during your early stages of your pre-sales career.
Sure. So I think for me, some of it happened organically. Like I didn't have necessarily a playbook. I think even people trying to break into the space now can see a lot of people who've been successful in it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when like 2 years ago when I started, I thought LinkedIn for one was boring Facebook, and people only posted about their job promotions and stuff like that. But I think when I started like sort of distilling what I was learning about pre-sales into ways to make engagements, that's where it started opening doors for me and allowing me to have authentic conversations with people. I think a key like feature or skill that any SE or anybody who wants to be an SE should have is curiosity and authenticity. And so if you begin to have connections with people and ask them earnestly to just speak with them without having specifically like an ulterior motive, like, hey, I want a referral, or hey, I want, advice, or I want you to mentor me, things like that. Like when you can have a real authentic conversation and find out more about them, that's when doors can open for you. So that's kind of how I began to kind of build, I guess, influence, if you would say.
Yeah.
Specifically, things that worked for me was I felt like I tried a lot of different things when I started posting on LinkedIn. I find that video content performs the best specifically for me. So when I started making dumb TikToks and posting them on LinkedIn, that's when I started seeing, people wanting to connect with me and facilitate that conversation in a two-way.
Well, it's interesting because like I feel like video content nowadays just it makes it more personal because they could see the actual person. It is not just a long message that I need to read. It's a
Yeah,
little bit more accessible.
yeah, I mean, I tried writing blogs and I was doing all these things, but and sometimes like if you look at analytics on LinkedIn and you see, oh, what things did I write that got engagement? One time I wrote a one sentence thing about, trying to connect with other SEs is putting a calendar on your Google calendar and constantly rescheduling because one of you has a conflict. And it's like it is true, and it got like 30,000 whatever impressions, but you don't ever know. But the point is that you're making a habit of it and you're trying to facilitate that conversation with people.
Definitely. No, I really loved your note about building authentic relationships because I find nowadays sometimes it's like, okay, why am I networking? I want a network for referral to get a job, but you need to think about it more on a deeper level of how am I building a connection? How am I really creating a two-way street to not only learn from this individual, but also for them to learn from me? It might feel weird, especially starting out in this profession of like, I don't have anything to offer, but over time, you'll definitely determine, hey, there are things I can give and I can contribute a lot to this space. It doesn't always need to be a lot at front, but you need to think about that two-way street, that mutually beneficial relationship for the long-term growth of your influence.
I think too, like people in tech are some of the nicest people that I've ever met, coming from another field where there's a lot of, people who mean well, but just are very, very stressed. Like it was so nice starting to talk to people. So yeah, thinking about, and especially for people who are aspiring, who are going to want to connect with people, like just think about like, what can you offer them? Like, why should they take a meeting with you? What can make it a two-way mutually beneficial connection?
No, very well said. I have a question to kind of build off this topic for Georgia. I know Curtis highlighted some of his strategies. Do you have any of do you have any strategies of your own that you've used for building your network or relationships over time that have been really significant in your journey?
Yeah, I definitely echo what Curtis said about LinkedIn. I think I always hate to word it like this, but it's about building your brand as well. I always see that it's always that comment that you don't want the first experience someone to have of you being that open to work banner, right? You want everyone to see you beforehand. Then it's a bit more personal. They know you, they know what sort of stuff you sort of stand for, everything like that. So it is about building that brand. I've been quite lucky internally where I work. A lot of my colleagues are really good on LinkedIn and they're putting out really great LinkedIn content. So I've definitely been building up relationships with them internally, learning from them. It's something that I'm not very good at, so I'll hold my hands up. I'm probably the worst on the panelists for my current activity, but it's yeah, it's a bit of a funny one. I definitely feel like now I'm getting a bit older. I'm clicking less on Instagram and more on LinkedIn at the end of the day, which is a definite big shift. But yeah, I'm definitely here for that.
Like, oh, I was just going to comment on, I think it's just so nice that, hey, you don't always need to be the one posting if you're interacting with posts on LinkedIn. That is a great way to kind of start that engagement cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even think it's about always what you're posting. I've had so many great conversations in messages, particularly something that I've picked up. I listen to a lot of the PreSales Collective podcasts in the car. And sometimes I'll hear something great and then afterwards I'll connect with that person on LinkedIn and send them a message. It probably is based around what I've listened to on that webinar or that podcast. But yeah, I found that really great and it's a really good way of connecting with people. I've learned so many good things and everybody else's content that they're putting out as well. You just learn so many cool tips. I think my one sort of takeaway tip this week that I saw on LinkedIn was just slow down. And again, I think that's always so relevant for pre-sales, and I'm so guilty when I'm so excited about something, just going really super fast, and you just think you just need to take a breath and slow down. So little simple, useful things like that, you just pick up at the end of the day when I'm scrolling on my phone, I'll just pick that up.
I love that. I think it's interesting because as we're thinking about that perspective from a new solutions consultant or one aspiring, at the end of the day, it's thinking about, hey, how are you putting yourself out there? How are you finding comfort with networking or building influence in a way that makes sense for you? Is it posting your own content or is it reaching out to people or is it both? Because at the end of the day, what I have seen to be really important in the space is, you want to slowly build that influence over time because you never know where a connection or a relationship will help lead you on that long-term career. It's something I always kind of ingrain into our career changers is, the connections that you're building right now are ones that aren't just going to get you your first job. They're ones to really help shape your pathway down the line. And there's multiple different outlets and routes to kind of engage with. And you never know what content you're going to come across to be like, hey, this is really salient with me. This is maybe something I want to try out and kind of bring into my flow. So thanks. I love those notes. Another topic that I've been kind of thinking about, especially when it comes to new solutions consultants, new solutions engineers, really is let's talk a little bit about the challenges that kind of come with this process. Like, I know each of y'all have come from a different space, and it is sometimes hard to just make that shift into pre-sales or make that shift to working on a new team. And I know I see some questions in the Q&A, so I'm really excited for us to pose them a little bit later in this chat. But I'm really curious to hear from Khalil about if there was any significant challenges that you faced during your transition into pre-sales and what you really do to overcome them, because I know that everyone's path into this profession looks very different.
Yeah, it is for sure. So I know early on after I've actually made the decision, like, okay, this is something that I want to go through. And by the way, I went through the pre-sales academy as well. So I think early on was just, because I was working full time, being able to juggle that family, being able to obviously study, be able to, and on top of that, like networking, naturally an introvert. So just forcing myself to be able to, make those connections, make those coffee chats. That was something that was definitely challenging. And, I kind of overcame that by just, having a routine and making sure I was really meticulous of my schedule during those months leading up to the, actually me interviewing and actually landing the role. And then early on, like actually, after I landed the role, a little bit about my company, we essentially have like identity as a service. So we do
Mhm.
authentication, and it's a pretty deep and technical product and requires a lot of like technical know-how. It's a dev tool. So just being able to level myself up, I haven't prior to landing my role. It was a while since I wrote some code, so just being able to understand that, hey, I need to, really get into deep knowledge of how these APIs work,
Mhm.
knowing that you're the subject matter expert and knowing that you represent that for your for the customer to the customer is something that, I had to, work on. But in addition to that, is I think everyone can attest to just the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That's something mentally that you have to kind of fixate yourself, and it's something that you always going to deal with, and just being able to have that vulnerability and openness and understanding, like, yeah, I know this is um, what I'm experiencing, but I'm going
Mhm.
to, have that mental fortitude to overcome that and be able to know, yes, I belong in what I'm doing, and yes, I'm the subject matter expert for this particular topic. So.
No, I think imposter syndrome comes up so much when making that shift into a new career or even just into a new role. It's that uncertainty of, hey, can I actually do this? Why did they choose me for this position? And reminding yourself of like, hey, I am here for a reason. I was chosen for a reason. I have this potential and growth. I'm curious, does anyone in the space have additional thoughts and comments on imposter syndrome? Because I feel like that is such a big challenge that often comes up in that shift into pre-sales.
I can speak a little. I don't think it ever goes away. And when I was actually in the foundations course, one of the coaches was saying, he's like, I still get imposter syndrome. And I've been doing this 40, 50 years. So I think for me, at least the best thing you can do is just keep learning, keep reading, keep networking, and never stop. But just also, have that confidence to move forward.
No, I agree. I think it's also sometimes about who are the people who you surround yourself with? Who are those people who are going to lift you up and remind you of your purpose, especially when you're feeling low? I think that has come up a lot in my own journey and also with working with career changers is, hey, sometimes you need that person to lean on to be like, hey, I need someone to center me and ground me and make sure I'm not, really diving too deep into that imposter syndrome. But no, great. Oh, Chris, I saw you come off mute.
Oh, I know. Probably speaking too much, but I will
No, you're
just say
good.
that I didn't really, honestly, I didn't have too much imposter syndrome when I was changing careers. I had it about 6 months into the career,
Mm,
where I woke up one day and I was like, I don't know anything. I don't think I know anything at all. And, the thing, like you said, about who do you surround yourself, I immediately on my one-on-ones with my manager, I was like, this is how I'm feeling. I know it's probably not true, but like, can we talk about it? Can we like dissect the demo? Can we find things that I can work on? Because maybe like an imposter syndrome is an opportunity to grow in a certain way, right? And what I said earlier about different demos for different personas, that was where I needed to grow in that moment. Was I had a couple demos with high level people where I felt like it was not resonating, and I needed a chance to sit down and work on that specific skill to improve. And that's when I was like, okay, I've moved past it. It was an opportunity to grow, and I took advantage of it.
no, thank you so much for chiming in, Curtis, because I think I love how those elements kind of came together of, hey, sometimes we feel imposter syndrome at the beginning of our process. Sometimes it can come up any stage, even when you're a manager or further along in your career or 6 months in, like this is something we always need to think about and go back to and surround ourselves with people who really can help push us and get past those moments. So I really appreciate you sharing that insight. Going off that topic of kind of finding those people and kind of finding those connections on your team, one question I actually had for the group, and I'll have Lexi speak to first, is really it's hard kind of coming into a new team. And how did you really foster collaboration with your new pre-sales team, especially with people coming from a variety of backgrounds and experiences?
Yeah, I think outside of obviously collaborating often and enthusiastically, one of the best things we do is just maintain those call reviews. So
Nice.
reviewing everything from discovery to demonstrations to trial kickoffs, because everyone has a unique approach to demoing and wordsmithing the solution and how it can solve for pain points. You know, like Curtis mentioned, how you're speaking to certain roles and individuals. And you can really cherry pick to craft your own style. And I think that also not only gives you like your unique style, but also creates a united front with your team. So everyone's on the same page about how they're speaking to the product, how they're dealing with common objections, you know, so on and so forth.
Nice. No, I love how that it's a space to kind of like come together, share thoughts, and kind of grow together. It's interesting how like teams are ultimately like formed in pre-sales and how everyone's kind of leveraging each other. I find it's a lot of people talk about the importance of teamwork in this space, but sometimes you don't really understand it until you're like in the mix.
Mhm.
Nice. Does anyone have any other experiences about fostering connections with their team before I move on? Perfectly fine and good. Let's get into our final category before we open it up for Q&A because I do want to make sure we have time for that. I since y'all have had such different experiences throughout pre-sales, I wanted us to take a little bit of time to think about, hey, you know, what advice can we share to our attendees in the audience? And what can they learn and take away from this experience, especially as they're going on their own path, whether it's new to the role or trying to break into pre-sales. So I'm going to start with Georgia. And my question for you is, what advice do you have for pre-sales professionals looking to push for continued growth in their careers?
Yeah, I think be remaining flexible, um, being open to trying anything, being open to go anywhere in pre-sales. Obviously we've all got, and I think again this is a very general thing, we've all got our little niches or
Mhm.
specific areas that we work in. Mine's e-commerce, for example, but I think it's remaining fluid and flexible to
Yeah.
think, hang on, should I try this area as well? And I think again, early on in your career is probably a good time to maybe try around, try a few different things out, try a few different areas and see what sort of works best. But yeah, on top of that as well, I think that builds nicely into sort of personal development. So I think professional development, you can never do enough of it, whether it's
Mhm.
just 20 minutes or, like I said, listening to a podcast in the car. That's what's going to help keep your skills flexible, so that if you do look to change in the future or look to a new role, you've got those skills developed ready for that.
No, I love that. It's about kind of how you fitting it really into things that already exist in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. And then sort of my one last thing I would
Mhm.
say is, and again, this might be something I'm just speaking to my friends completely outside of tech about, and they say, oh, I really like the idea of looking at this role, but I'm not sure about it. I'd just say sort of shoot your shot. So
Yeah.
a lot of people will look at a role or a specific company and say, it's that imposter syndrome again. I don't think I'm good enough for that, or I'm not sure. But apply for it, have a go, learn the skills for it. You're not going to get anywhere unless you actually press apply and apply for that role in the first place.
I love that note. Same question for Khalil. What advice do you have for pre-sales professionals looking to push their growth in their careers?
And for sure, I would say just piggybacking off of what George's comments on like personal development. That's always key. I would say that would be top thing I would recommend. Um, my manager and has our pre-sales team, like another good book to read and go through is like that Doing Discovery by Peter Cohen.
Mm, yep.
Um, that just if you're, committed to being able to more than just a surface level discovery and be able to like get deeper and really understand the problem statement and the pain points of what the customer is experiencing, is definitely a good read, and I'm still going through it and referencing it. And then another piece on professional development, like, most titles or roles have as sales engineers, there's the engineering aspect. So like just understanding that you do have to, there is some level of technical aptitude that you need to, you know, have. So just making sure that you're always leveling yourself up as far as that, making sure you're there, that you're the subject matter expert. I'm constantly like doing Udemy courses on the side of like how
Nice.
I can, you know, level up on certain technical aspects that I'm a little weak on. So that would be what my recommendation is as far as, your continued growth in your pre-sales role.
I love that. There's always that space to kind of push yourself further and learn new things. I think that's kind of funny how people like find pre-sales. It's like so many people I've heard are like, "Oh, I love to learn." And honestly, there's so many learners in the pre-sales space, and it doesn't even go into just career changers. It goes to people who are been in the role for a bit, are like, "Hey, yeah, no, I always want to put myself in a space where I'm learning new things." So I'm really glad you brought that up, Khalil, because that is so important and powerful just for the long-term growth of one's career. So thank you so much for sharing. Bring it to another side. I know that we all have our own different strategies for kind of like setting goals and achieving that long-term success, whatever you might define in your career. I'm curious for Curtis and Lexi, um, what are your personal strategies for kind of like setting a goal for your career and kind of sticking to it? I'm going to start with Lexi on answering this question.
Yeah, so I would say first just identify where you want to go and what you're good at. So like with any industry or team or department, but especially in the SE space, there's so many different avenues. Like if you are interested in cybersecurity, you want to get into networking or building environments, and solutions architect is more your style. There's a lot to learn in each space, but they're all very different. Or if you want to build and manage a team, so just think about that and align what you're good at and what you're passionate about and start exploring that. I think a major strategy, and I know we've said this multiple times, but is just to never stop learning and never stop networking. I think like, especially today, there's so many ways to absorb information. We don't really have an excuse not to. So yeah.
I love that. Curtis, what are your thoughts?
I want to echo what Lexi said, and also Georgia and Khalil. Like, we now work in an innovation space. We're
Yes.
all working at essentially startups that have a roadmap that are constantly improving. Thus, we too have to constantly improve. And even in my short stint at the company that I'm at, I've had to learn new things that I never thought I would have to learn. And that's part of the fun of it. But I think, in terms of like trying to get somewhere in your career, there is a career path. That's the one great thing that really appealed to me about this. And I think it's about knowing what the path is, like Lexi said, and consistently tracking your progress. And that's with having conversations with your manager, but also writing down everything you do in your job, so that you can sit there and go, hey, I need a promotion because I did this, this, and this, and I influenced this kind of deal, and I worked on this kind of project, and I ran this trial or POC or whatever. And so a great habit that I'm really trying to make sure that I instill is documenting everything that I do, especially accolades, right? So I have a happiness box. That is also something I do, which is anytime I get a shout out, I screenshot it and I put it in a folder so that I can either reference it later, or if I have a horrible day, look at it. And then also task and metric tracking. Also, echoing the last two panelists about just like upskilling, right? There are certifications you can get. Another thing for 2024 for me, I want to get an Amazon web certification. It was my 2023 goal. Anyways, now it's my 2024 goal. And there are great books to read out there too, like The 6 Habits of Highly Successful, Highly Effective Sales Engineers by Chris White, The Social Sales Engineer. All those things can help you get to the next level.
No, amazing thoughts in the space. I love that. I love that nugget on we have to constantly improve because it's just what this industry demands of us. And I love those kind of structures you've put in place, Curtis, to keep yourself kind of like in the loop and continue pushing yourself. So thank you so much for sharing. I want to get to some of our Q&A before we do some wrap up because we have limited time. One question that came across the Q&A box was really interesting. And so I'll break it down here for y'all. But Kevin says one of the challenges they've been experiencing as a new SC is speaking to customers on their expected implementation experience or speaking as to how other customers are using their product. Because they're so confused on the focus, since they're so focused on the pre-sale side of the customer experience, they've had some challenges really speaking to that post-sales experience. They were wondering, have you felt the same way? And have you done anything to kind of address and solve for that? So speaking for maybe the post-sales side of working with your product.
I can only speak to my company, but we do have a customer success team that works entirely on post sales, so with customers. So I would say if you also have that department in your company, leverage those people, learn customer stories, learn wins, and really just better learn how to better speak to that kind of post sales experience through the people that are in it every day.
Well, that's a good nugget. Any other thoughts on this question?
I've got some. Something that really helped me. Again, we've got sort of a dedicated team afterwards, but with the product that I work with, we quite often experience expansions. So we kind of still have to keep in touch, not necessarily communication wise, but keep in touch with the team managing that account for now, so that we're ready for that expansion. But one of the things that really helped me was actually just practicing playing with the product myself, loading up data into it, trying different APIs, things like that, and actually practicing using it myself, which sounds so simple, but I learned so much just by loading in an XML file one day, for example. So it was really useful, and you learn about the little hidden areas and things like that. So that really helped me, and then I felt a lot more confident speaking about it afterwards.
Nice. No, I think that's a really smart way to go about it. It's like, hey, how am I trying it out myself, but also how am I leveraging other people at my company, like my customer service team, and kind of having those conversations with them to widen my view. Great answers. Good question. Another question in the chat is, they want to talk a little bit more about internal customers. So your AEs or other stakeholders that you work with at your companies. Does anyone have any advice on how to build or earn trust with your account executive or other stakeholders at your company?
I would say just having being able to get to understand your what's the value that you can bring to them, and being able to bring value to them, they'll be able to reciprocate that the other way. So just we have one-on-ones with our AEs and other internal members, and obviously we're an open door in our company, but just being able to have that, and then just a level of transparency, just knowing that, hey, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to go back to bat for you, even if I don't have the answer. And rather than you trying to do something half baked, per se, is something that I found that a lot of people on my team have found very valuable, and has built trust in our relationship and our working relationship for various deals.
Nice. Nice. No, I agree. I think really showcasing like, hey, what do you bring to the table and coming at it on that kind of level is really effective, especially with building trust. Another question I have, specifically for Georgia, because you brought it up, you mentioned some podcasts. What do you recommend?
The honestly, the pre-sales collective ones, you can get them on Spotify. I think there's well over 100, nearly you'll know. There's
Mhm.
quite a lot, but they're for all sorts of topics. I mean, I'm particularly interested in women in tech and that kind of thing, and there's some great ones on that, and diversity and things like that are really cool. But yeah, I really like them because again, it pops up on my car when I get in now because I'm on the playlist for it. And I typically do the school run in the middle of the day. So I still feel like I'm in work mode because I can pop something on like that while I'm still in productive time of day. And I don't know, but it's something when I'm driving, I really take with it.
Nice. I know one that's relatively new. One of our past career advisors started one called Demo Jockeys, and they kind of dive into different like books and processes for pre-sale. So that's a cool one to explore as well. Um, any other podcast recs that the group loves?
There's one called Two Pre-Sales in a Pod. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
EMEA based one that I really like. There's also there's We the Sales Engineers that I've listened to as well. But yeah, I mean, there's always new content. Like Lexi said, it's just a wealth of content coming from
Mhm.
audiobooks and podcasts and webinars like this. So, you know, soak it all in, become a sponge, and that's how you improve.
And while it's not a podcast, I will say Rue Dickinson I
Oh
think
yeah.
he's the instructor on LinkedIn. His videos and posts are incredibly helpful. So yeah, shout out to him.
Nice. No, I love when we're sharing little extra resources in the space. So thanks y'all for chiming in. It is almost the end of this panel, so I want to make sure we do some wrap up. Thank you all for being present in the space, and thank you especially for my lovely panelists. I loved engaging in this conversation with you all and diving into your experiences and getting those great tips and resources. Like those were so valuable, and thank you all so much for being present in this space. For all my attendees, there will be a recording of this sent out to y'all. If you have questions that weren't answered, please pose them in the pre-sales collective Slack. I know we want to keep the conversation flowing, so please put it there. But thank you all for an amazing session, and we hope to see you around the community very soon. Bye, y'all.